This is a cocoa pod. It's quite unattractive with a hard rind and very little pulp. It's also rather acidic, ripens unevenly, and frequently rots right on the tree. You could say the cocoa pod possesses every drawback a fruit could possibly have. Yet humans remain fixated on it because we're after the bitter hard seeds inside. And these are the source of chocolate cocoa beans. The catch is these seeds aren't exactly easy to come by. Cocoa trees primarily grow in the humid tropical regions near the equator. They are incredibly finicky, which is why expanding cocoa production has been such a slow process. According to eco data, global cocoa bean stocks have plummeted from 177 million tons in 2022-23 to just 13 million tons in 2023-24. Consequently, cocoa beans have become a highly contested global resource. Here's the price trajectory of the world's most watched commodities over the last 4 years. Among them, one commodity stands out for its staggering price hike: cocoa. In just 4 years, it soared by 226, while gold rose by 59, and the shares climbed by 28. What exactly is the allure of chocolatey? Is it destined to become a luxury item in the future? And how should we go about choosing the right chocolate for ourselves? Hello everyone, I'm Kanchai. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the world of chocolatey. Looking back over the past few decades, cocoa has appeared to be a remarkably stable raw material, low in price, with minimal volatility and a seemingly inexhaustible supply. Chocolate on supermarket shelves has always been affordable. However, this stability was merely an illusion. Over 70% of the world's cocoa originates from just a few countries in West Africa. There, millions of smallholder farmers have cultivated cocoa for generations. But here's the rub. They can't make a decent living. Cocoa prices have been suppressed in a low range for far too long. Middlemen, international brands and futures markets form a stable yet cruel system. The longer farmers cultivate these crops, the poorer they become. Consequently, the entire industry has entered an extremely perilous state. Everyone is barely scraping by with no capacity to invest in the future. A key characteristic of modern agriculture is its capacity for rapid recovery. If a production line breaks down, equipment can be replaced. If a factory stops, production capacity can be transferred, but agriculture lacks that flexibility. Cocoa is a perennial crop. It typically takes 3 to 5 years for a tree to bear fruit after planting. If you lack the funds to replace aging trees today, it's not just about a smaller harvest next year. You are effectively overdrawing on the next 5 years. This is precisely the situation facing cocoa growing regions in West Africa. So what does this imply? Collapse. The cocoa industry has lost its capacity for renewal. Any minor shock is now amplified into a total collapse. But fortune was not on our side. Starting in 2023, extreme rainfall and abnormal droughts began to batter West Africa. This hot and humid environment accelerated the spread of diseases, which has proven fatal for the cocoa industry. The market has taken notice since the start of 2024. Global markets have realized that a cocoa shortage is likely for years to come. Prices are skyrocketing, moving far beyond normal linear fluctuations, because the industry no longer has any safety cushion. If we step back and look at the bigger picture, we see a very familiar pattern emerging. Coffee, bananas, and cocoa crops, highly dependent on a few specific regions, have all experienced extreme volatility over the past decade. Moreover, they have long been treated as mere cheap commodities should variables like climate, disease, labor, or politics falter in any way. Prices will spiral out of control. For the past few decades, we have been consuming undervalued chocolatey. These low prices aren't because chocolate is inherently cheap. It's because others have been bearing the costs for the world, and now those costs are coming due all at once. The reckoning is straightforward. Chocolate will become more expensive. Some products will pivot to being merely chocolate flavored, with a significant increase in substitutes and recipe adjustments. But what this reckoning truly exposes isn't just price hikes across the board, but the disparity in the quality of the raw materials. When cocoa remains cheap, industrial formulas can mask differences in quality. Once prices reflect their true cost, the quality of the cocoa beans once again dictates the ceiling of the product. This is why the industry must establish rigorous standards to distinguish commodity grade beans from specialty cocoa. So how do you produce a high quality chocolatey? This is the world's most influential chocolate industry research institute. They've developed a cocoa grading rubric used globally. During screening, they first check for hard defects like moisture content, mold, and insect damage, then perform a cut test to check for proper fermentation. After these tests comes the most critical criterion: aroma. When you can consistently detect more than 2 or 3 distinct positive aromas in the ground cocoa without any many off flavors, then you have specialty grade cocoa. Does chocolate made according to these standards necessarily guarantee a delicious taste? To understand this, we must go back to the source of the cocoa bean. This is a cocoa pod freshly harvested from the tree. Inside each pod are 20 to 50 beans covered in a sticky white pulp. Fermentation, drying, grading, and cleaning. Throughout these stages, cocoa beans are frequently exposed to tropical, open-air environments. This is why food regulations worldwide acknowledge that in natural agricultural products, trace amounts of residues from small animals like rodents and cockroaches are permissible. For instance, the US FDA's defect levels handbook clearly stipulates that cocoa products may contain trace amounts of harmless insect fragments. Only after completing these steps are they truly considered raw cocoa beans. Then they undergo the grading and selection process mentioned earlier. The beans that pass are bagged and transported to factories for roasting. High temperatures activate the cocoa bean's aroma. The characteristic scent found in most finished chocolates is actually determined at this very stage. The roasted beans are crushed, ground, and refined to form cocoa liquor. The result is pure 100 cocoa chocolatey. However, because the flavor of pure cocoa liquor is too intense and the processing is more challenging after the liquor stage, many manufacturers choose to further press and separate it. This produces cocoa butter and cocoa press cake. This is the stage of maximum technical intervention in the industry, and where the quality gap between different chocolates is formed. The dark, white, and milk chocolates we enjoy today are all designed at this point. Increasing the cocoa content to 35-85 gives us dark chocolatey, retaining only cocoa butter, while removing cocoa solids results in white chocolatey. With cocoa content under 25 and about 3 milk fat, it's milk chocolatey. The defining documents for high-tier chocolate in global food trade, 2 red lines of strict criteria are established. First, adding other edible ingredients like nuts, grains, or fillings is permitted, but the total amount of these additions cannot exceed 40 of the finished chocolatey. Second, cocoa butter substitute CBE can be used, but CBE can only account for a maximum of 5 of the final product. In China's current national standards, there are also strict requirements for the addition of cocoa butter substitutes. What exactly are cocoa butter substitutes? Why do many national regulations strictly limit their content in chocolate products? The so-called CBs are mainly cheap vegetable fats, such as tropical oils like palm kernel oil, coconut oil, or hydrogenated fats. Many chocolate snacks on the market today primarily use cocoa butter substitutes. In these snacks, CBE usually accounts for 10 to 20. For chocolate-flavored wafers, the CBE content ranges from 20 to 35. As for chocolate coatings on ice cream and other snacks, the CBE content can be as high as 35 to 45. So why is chocolate made with CBE allowed on the market? Simply because it's cheap. Comparing the costs, cocoa butter is 30 yuan per ton, while CBE costs only 70 to 80 yuan. That's why many manufacturers use it for wafer coatings or ice cream shells. It stays hard at room temperature and won't melt in summer, but it tastes like wax. Real chocolate melts in your mouth, but CBE just lingers in your mouth for a long time, and after eating, it can leave a greasy film on your palate. So, if there were no restrictions, the name chocolate would lose all its integrity. As for the variety of chocolates on the market, such as the dark white and milk chocolates mentioned earlier, their differences in cocoa powder or variations in the added amounts of cocoa, butter, dairy, and sugar in lead to significant differences in appearance. But to distinguish between them, you only need to focus on one key parameter. That is the cocoa content. The higher the cocoa content, the more expensive the chocolate becomes. In terms of composition, dark chocolate is the closest to original cocoa. By weight, the cocoa content must be at least 35. High-end dark chocolates can even reach 60 to 85, resulting in the lowest sugar content. However, they offer the best antioxidant benefits, making them a favorite for those managing weight or sugar intake. As for milk chocolate, additional milk powder and sugar are added. The flavor is rich and milky, but the cocoa content is diluted accordingly. White chocolate contains no cocoa solids, only cocoa butter, sugar, and milk. Thus, strictly speaking, it isn't real chocolatey. However, this doesn't affect its sweet appeal or popularity. It remains a top seller as a Valentine's Day gift aid. So you will find that the manufacturing of different chocolates is not essentially just a matter of flavor preference. It begins with a difficult to grow cocoa cocoa pod passing through a fragile agricultural system, irreparable time, cost the industrial reshaping of flavor and the regulatory boundaries that define it. Only then does it become the final product in your hand, defined by its sweetness and value. When raw materials are cheap, formulations can blur the differences between products. But once prices reflect their true cost, what constitutes cocoa versus what is merely chocolate flavored must be clearly redefined. This is why standards exist and why red lines must be drawn. By discussing all this, we aren't just advocating for expensive, pure cocoa butter, chocolate, nor are we trying to make everyone overthink their chocolate choices. I just want everyone to know exactly what they're eating so they can enjoy it with peace of mind. After all, as a flavored treat, its original purpose was simply to bring joy.